this will be some asterisk next to it. How do we handle the
let me ask
data sources?
Let me ask a different question. So, and I apologize because my memory for details is terrible. If we leave the existing behavior where we auto clear it, and we add the populators, we follow through with that cap and PR. The populators allows you to have any source as long as that source is registered, right?
Well, actually, what it means is the API server will allow anything that except a core object other than a PVC in that field. And then if it is something that is not recognized not registered as a populator, you'll get events. We were still talking about doing asynchronous warnings, saying, hey, unless you don't agree with that. I mean, I guess.
No, that's consistent. So anyway, the point I was getting to is, if we really have to take the slow path on the bug fix, we could, and that doesn't actually affect the populators change, right?
Correct.
So for example, hey, you're not allowed to put core objects here. I'm going to throw an annotation on your object and then clear it like we always did before. And now we can go through, say, March of 2022, go through the fleet of GKE and whoever else wants to participate and say, hey, is anybody actually doing this? Right? If they are, then we have different data. And if they're not, then we are safe to proceed, right? I don't really want to be talking about this again in a year, but that's the safer path. So, but if we go that avenue, we're not saying that all the populator work has to wait for another year also. Okay. Correct?
Right. The populator work can proceed separately from this. I guess the open question on the populator side is for things that the populator controller doesn't know about. Is it better to reject those using like a validating webhook or to post events on them? And we were saying we prefer events. I think you were a little conflicted on this last week.
And this is going for beta now.
The KEP says we're going to go beta in 121.
Okay. So, and the existing behavior is just to throw events, right, in alpha?
No, well, no, the existing behavior is that everything gets zeroed. Unless you turn the feature gate on, in which case it just sits there and you get nothing.
It doesn't throw any events right now.
Right, because what the feature gate does is it basically relaxes the admission controller's behavior of zeroing out the field. What we're adding in 121 is a separate controller that is going to watch your PVCs and warn you when they have data sources that don't match something. And that controller only makes sense when we're not zeroing out the field. So we have to put the admission controller into beta so that we're not zeroing out the field. And then this other controller will start warning you that, hey, nothing's going to bind this volume.
Right. Okay. So allowing anything moves to beta. The new controller isn't strictly coupled to that, right?
It would be something that we would want Kubernetes distributions to install so that you get this warning. It wouldn't be absolutely necessary, but like the absence of it would cause bad behavior. So we would write a blog entry saying like, you need to include this controller, much like what happened with snapshots. When we shipped snapshots, you had to install CRD, you had to install a controller. We encouraged Kubernetes distros to do that. And it didn't happen. It didn't happen across the board, but GKE did, and a few others are belatedly doing it. So.
And but strictly speaking, if you don't run this controller, the feature still works, right? The type, I forget what the type name was, but for the populator registration.
It's a little funny because you can't without the controller and CRD being installed, you can't register the populator, but the populator can still perform its job. It won't be registered. It'll just be populating volumes and
right.
And watching for the PVC.
The registration is only valuable in as much as you can use it to say you're not registered.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
Correct.
and that CRD itself is not alpha. Like, is it alpha? What's the state? Like, have users already experienced it, or are we jumping straight to beta?
We would be jumping straight to beta. Which is sketchy, I admit, but I don't know what else to do there.
So it jumps to beta. I'm trying to think through what are the risks, right? What happens if it goes sideways? Well, the risk here, the biggest risk here is you've got a controller that starts spamming events on everything, and worst case, like, makes your control plane unavailable, right? It's a pretty bad worst case, right? Seems unrealistic, but it's there, and we have no real testing on it except whatever you all have done by hand.
Mm-hmm.
That said, the truth is that nobody uses alphas anyway, so it wouldn't have gotten much testing anyway.
Yeah.
Beta. There's no other changes to existing types, right?
No, we don't propose any changes to any types, just this new CRD. And the relaxation of the validation of data source field.
Right. Okay. I think that seems okay. I'm going to regret that if your controller explodes on me.
All right, I'll make sure that doesn't happen.
Please, okay. For the sake of the users, not me.
Yes. So there were a few other feedbacks that you put on the KEP that I wanted to just address real quick. So
great, let's do it.
The one about metrics. So you had asked about what kind of metrics we can output here, and the response back was, or for me, was that for actual populators, they will of course generate their own metrics, but the metrics that I think are going to be most useful to an operator are going to be the one that you suggested in particular was like, how long is it taking to bind volumes from the time the user creates the PVC to the time that it actually gets bound. And so we had a discussion with a larger SIG storage community, and apparently we already have metrics on this number in general, but not broken down by kind. And so what we need is sort of a change to how the core metrics are generated, to basically break down that particular time elapsed from PVC creation to PVC bound by data source kind. And I think that's also kind of a separate effort, because that's a core feature to enhance that metric that's useful for all kinds of reasons, not just for the populators.
Okay.
So is that a reasonable plan to?
That seems like a reasonable answer. Does that mean it's its own, a separate KEP for adding these new metrics? Or maybe not a KEP, but a separate track?
Yeah, I'm sort of hoping that someone new to the SIG storage community will want to sort of pick that up and run with it, because it's a relatively small bite-sized chunk of work that is not directly tied into any of this, and is generically useful. I suppose I could pick it up later on, but given that it was separable and that this is sort of high priority, I wanted to do this.
Yeah, what I want to avoid is putting a blind spot in and then hoping that somebody will eventually fix the blind spot.
Yeah, I guess the difference is that almost all of the code for volume populators is outside of the core, with the exception of the validation of the data source. And these metrics are part of the core. So that's why I didn't. The scheduling gets funny, because we do a lot of work in the various repos sort of out of cycle with Kubernetes itself. But obviously a core change has to be in cycle with Kubernetes. So like it would not fit in 121 at the very least. It would be a 122 thing.
Yeah. That seems okay. Yeah, I would encourage strongly that we find how to get better visibility into these things as we add more third-party actors. Being able to have a central set of metrics that gives us that observability is pretty important.
Yeah. I love the idea of having that metric and being able to break it down by kind so that you can say, okay, my regular volumes are binding fast, but these populator volumes, something's wrong with them. And so I need to go investigate that. It's exactly what an operator would want. Yeah, it just doesn't feel like it's on the critical path for me.
Okay.
There was one more feedback. You had suggested we contact SIG security, and I was curious why, because we never did pull in the SIG security guys. Do you think that's essential? Do you see something that you think is going to?
I forget what I was getting to. Oh, I think it was simply like, are there security implications to being able to, like, who can register a data populator? And you've answered, you've cut off one big vector by just saying we don't accept core types, right? But could I find a way to, the reason I asked for SIG security is because they're good at coming up with answers to the questions of, could I find a way to, could I trick your controller into letting me register, you know, a foobar populator that you somehow escalates the privilege because of the way it's running and is able to steal secrets from another namespace or something, right?
To be clear, like, populators are basically running with admin privileges because they have the ability to rebind PVs,
right?
Not non-namespaced. So, like, it is not possible to write a populator that doesn't have fairly high privileges in the cluster. And so when admins install populators, they are handing over a fairly high level of control to the populators. And that's not something we can do much about, I'm afraid. There just has to be a level of trust with populators and a level of verification, and you know, hopefully they're open source and you can go read the code and make sure there's nothing evil in there.
Because they have RBAC right to volumes. So yeah, that seems like a reasonable answer. I would maybe still take it async. Like, the SIG security folks are awesome. And
okay. I like the idea of just giving them an opportunity to shoot holes in it because
they're very good at that. And especially before you GA it, like, hey, throw your best grenades at us. If our answer may simply be, yeah, that's possible, right?
Okay.
Don't run a controller that you don't trust, right?
Yeah. Okay. So I think that covers the your feedback and responses to it. So if you're satisfied with all that, I'll just proceed on the pushing that other KEP, and then so how do we get that in front of the right people once we have the other KEP that addresses the legacy behavior on fields?
We can tag them, and actually we can bring it up at SIGArch like next week. I'm looking at the calendar. I think it would be next week. Oh shoot, next week is
Code freeze next week.
Code freeze next week, but also we're going through perf reviews, so I have a conflict. I can maybe make it happen the 11th at SIGArch. So if you have a KEP that's out, and we can even sort of preemptively merge the fix and then bring it to SIGArch and say, like, hey, is anybody going to scream? Because if so, we can back it out.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. So I can have the KEP posted, or at least the PR for the KEP posted today, because I'm working on it now, and then also have the two specific code changes for the two KEPs for the core repo also pushed up very soon this week and get them reviewed and hopefully merged. And then we can have those other discussions. And if someone says no, this is a terrible idea, we will have the opportunity to back it out.
Okay. I am happy to look at things if you send them to me. The less you send to me, the happier you're going to be in terms of
Yeah,
timing.
these are going to be very small changes, extremely small.
Okay.
So
Okay.
should be easy reviews.
Okay. I will look for them.
Okay.
Cool.
All right. Yeah. If you have to go, that's fine. We're at
I
the bottom
do.
of the
Sorry.
hour.
Awesome.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for joining.
All right. Take care.
Shing and Saad and and Sean joined us too. Did you guys have anything for today?
Nothing from my end.
Yeah, I don't have anything either.
All right. Yeah, I'll just I mean that discussion with Tim was what I really wanted to have today. So if you guys don't have anything to add, we could go ahead and end this meeting. And by next week, we'll be staring code freeze in the face.
That next Tuesday? Okay.
Yep. So hopefully all the KEP work and the PRs for the core stuff will be done by then. And I also need to push another revision of the changes in the external provisioner repo that actually contain the volume populator CR and the controller, just to make sure that's in shape and mergeable. I think there's already a PR against the external provisioner repo. I'll have to double check that because I wrote that code last year and it's just been sitting there. So yeah, I'll probably ask you guys for some reviews. I guess that's what I'm saying.
Yep, sounds good.
Hopefully you can
Just
take a few minutes to do that.
drop me an email whenever you need me to look at anything.
Okay. All right.
All right, take care, folks.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.